everybody. Um, an interesting conversation. Someone I know dying to hear. Someone I know all of you want to listen to. Spend her entire matters that have to do with and all of the issues. My guest is Erelu Bisi Fayemi. She's the wife of Governor of Ekiti State. Done a whole lot more. Many people see know that she has a loud voice, women and vulnerability. She's a gender and development specialist. She's a policy advocate. I've done a lot of things in the area of working on matters concerning deputy director of Africa. And this was an organization, the Organization for Women. It was based in London, Kampala. She was director of AMWA, and she also started the African Women Development Fund. I got to know about her before I actually met her. And I got to know about her through her.
Ah, Fumi, what happened?
Are you still on?
I'm on, but she's not.
Yeah, it's her network.
She's gone.
Yeah, it's her network. She's aware, but she has a bad network where she is. I don't know where she is, but her network is bad. You're still in her show. And you're alive.
To
Beam, where are you? Are you there?
You know what? In all of our states, I'm here. Yes, I can hear you. Can
Okay,
you hear
because you
me?
disappeared from the screen.
Hello?
Hello?
You hear me?
I can hear you with some difficulty.
Goodness. Oh my goodness. I hear you. Oh, no. I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
I can hear you. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Great.
Is it better?
It's better now. As I said, you disappeared off the screen altogether.
Wow. It's not better? No? It's better? Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, good. Oh, I'm so sorry. No, we can't afford not to hear each other. Okay. Okay. Well, I hope that we're going to be able to go through this. So, dear friends, and those who are watching us, I know you've been waiting for this. Please welcome Fayemi, who is my guest. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you very much, Sister Aibee. Thank you for inviting me.
I always say, every time you describe yourself, and that's a matter to try to figure out as they go along. For you, yes, what does that mean?
I'm sorry, Ibim, I can't hear you. Ibim, I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Are you able to hear me?
Okay. Did you ask a question just now?
Is the sound better now?
The sound is better. Just a second. I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Really? I can hardly
I
hear
hear
you.
you
Did
very
you ask a question?
loud.
Okay. Did you ask a question?
Yes, I said that.
The sound is better. Just
Oh, great. So I said, when you say you're a feminist, people wonder
Goodness. Um, Ibim,
Please do you now. Wow.
Ibim,
I
you
can
can
hear
hear me. I
you,
can
but can
hardly
you
hear
hear me?
you. You can hear me. I can hardly hear you.
I don't know
The
what's
sound
going on.
is going
I
on
hear
and off. You asked me a question about feminism, right? Oh, now there seems to be a delay in relaying the sound. Hello, Ibim. Can you hear her over? Hello, Ibim.
but she's not hearing me.
Hello. Okay, so
Okay,
you're
is
back
it
now.
better? Can you hear me now?
Hello. I can hear you now. Back now.
I don't know why it's going on.
Hear
Oh,
you
great.
now.
So I say, when you say you're a feminist, people wonder what does that really mean. What does it mean to be a feminist from your perspective?
Okay. Feminism is a concept that
Okay,
different things to
feminism
different
is a
people.
concept that different things to different people.
To me, feminism means
To me, feminism means
against all forms of patriarchal oppression.
against all forms of patriarchal oppression.
And this,
And
what
this,
what I
what I,
when I'm talking about patriarchal
when I'm talking about
oppression,
patriarchal
I'm talking
oppression,
about
I'm talking
institutions
about institutions
and structures
and structures
that are represented in our
that are
political,
represented in our political,
economic, social, religious, and cultural systems. Can you hear me?
yes, I
Hello,
can.
Ibim.
Hello, Ibi. Yes, I
Okay,
can. Okay.
okay. There was a bit of an echo. All right, so now I have these earphones on. So for me, it's about interrogating how all those systems impact on the lives of women because they are male dominated. They are structured to emphasize male control and dominance. And as a feminist, my job is to seek to dismantle these systems, and where they can't be dismantled, at least interrogate them so that we come to a place where we can have a world in which women's voices, women's lives, and their bodies, mean something, and we can live our lives with some dignity and respect. So that's what feminism means to me. And being a feminist, therefore, means that I am someone who works on ensuring that women live in a better world. I do not want to replace a patriarchy with a matriarchy. So the world I'm dreaming of is the world in which both men and women will have equality of opportunity and in which discrimination will not exist because everyone will be treated fairly.
Fairness. Fairness. That's a word that stands out. And the first question people are going to say, well, you talk about fairness all the time. And yet people imagine that, is there really fairness in the world? Is the world as balanced as we'd like to have it look? I mean, we talk about patriarchy and about reinforcing patriarchy, but there are those who will say to you, that's the whole concept of being a first lady. You're reinforcing patriarchy. People could say that. People could argue that how are you dismantling patriarchy when you don't have enough women even attempting to aspire?
Okay, that's a fair
Okay,
question.
that's
No
a
pun
fair
intended.
question. No pun intended.
Yes. Well, patriarchy has a lot of institutions as drivers. I've spoken about our political systems, our, religions, all organized religions embody, patriarchal norms and values. And marriage is another institution that certainly, if not addressed in a proper context, does is an institution that does not give men and women equality of opportunity or ensure that there's fairness. And that is why feminists say it is okay, it's a feminist choice to want to get married. That's absolutely fine if that is your choice. What I disagree with is women being forced into the institution of marriage. Any woman who wants to get married should be prepared to do the work of having those conversations or negotiations about what space she's able to occupy. And that also translates into the position I occupy now as the wife of a governor, the first lady of a state. It all depends on the governor and it all depends on the wife. I'm married to a husband who would also describe himself as a feminist as well, and he walks his talk. And so he knows that there's an amount of space, there's an amount of agency that that I'm entitled to in my own right as a woman, regardless of whether I'm a first lady or not. And so for me, this is just another platform within the patriarchal institutions that we are all aware of, in which I know change can be possible, which I know can be used to ensure that certain things get done. Did you get that, Ibim? Because you seem to... Oh dear. Okay. No, I can't hear you. I can read your lips. I can't hear you. Even the bit about reading your lips, I take that back. Okay. Oh, we'll get it done. Okay.
I can hear you loud and clear.
I couldn't hear you. Can you hear me now?
Okay. I hear you well. Yes. Can you hear me?
I couldn't hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So you know what I'm going to keep doing? I'm going to be asking those questions and dropping and writing them at the same time.
Okay. Because yes, we'll get it done.
This is crazy, but I was going to say that a major question.
Yes, we'll get it done.
Yeah, we'll get it done. Now, what I wanted to find out, quite frankly, when we talk about fairness and the whole issue of negotiating your space, okay, negotiating your space as women, how do we negotiate our space in an environment that forces us to have a voice? You don't have a body. How do your space? Did you hear that?
Not quite. Just a part of it. Oh, now I can't hear you at all. Not quite.
So I'm saying, how do you negotiate?
Just a part of it.
How do you negotiate your space in a society that doesn't allow you access?
I can't hear you at all. How do you negotiate your space in a society that does not allow you access? Is that the question? How do you negotiate your space in a society that does not allow you access
to your own?
Oh, okay. Okay. How do you negotiate your space in a society that doesn't allow you access or make decisions about your own body? That is why we need a feminist movement. And for those who are too scared or still don't understand or believe they have enough information to be able to describe themselves as such, that's why we need a movement around women's rights. And this movement is nothing new. We've just called it different things over time. We've had movements in our country, for example, around political space for women. And that is what our mothers, Mrs. Fundayo Ransom Kutri, Madam Margaret Echo, Hajia Gambo Sawaba, so many of them, those were the things they lived for and fought for. Nigerian women have contributed immensely to the development of this country in all spheres. But it's been extremely difficult to ensure that women have political space. And at this point in time in our history, with less than 6% of women in the National Assembly. This is from Nigeria, the giant of Africa. Compared with Rwanda, that has over 62% of women in their assembly. So the time has come for women to stop begging for inclusion and start making demands. We are a minimum of 50% of the population. We need to turn our numbers into a sound voting bloc. And even if we don't have enough numbers in terms of those of us who actually have voting cards and are able to vote, any man who comes to ask for a vote, if we don't have women to vote for, men who come to ask for a vote should be prepared to tell us what they are prepared to do to advance our interest. If I'm a woman and you want my vote, what are you going to do to ensure I have access to healthcare so that I don't die while giving birth? If you want me to give you my vote, how do you ensure that I have access to basic facilities as a woman who is farming, so that I don't spend all my life on the farm farming produce that I'll never be able to get to a market to sell? If you need my vote, what are you going to do to ensure that I have a say in decisions that are made about me or around me in my local government, in my state government, and so on? And very importantly, considering what is happening now, how can you guarantee my safety and well-being with all the violence that's being perpetrated on the bodies of women and girls? So for me, political space for women is the kind of space that allows women to make decisions about their lives, make decisions about their bodies and their societies, and ensure that we don't end up with a society that is consistently clapping with one hand and claiming that we are going to achieve any kind of national development.
Okay, so I hear that. A society that is clapping with one hand. And that takes me back to the main issue when I talk about this whole matter of political space. How can we guarantee safety of women, safety of our bodies, when we have people who, even in whether it's in the office or at home or in the political space, find it exciting to crack jokes about women's bodies? How can we begin to deal with the issue of gender-based violence from where it really occurs, which is the thought? When you think it's okay to crack every joke based on a woman's body. If it's not her butt, it's her bust. If it's not her bust, it's her... Why, how can we begin to address it from where it really matters, which is in the realm of thought?
Okay. So remember, we started this conversation with looking at patriarchal norms and values and institutions. And one of the ways in which patriarchy has ensured that there is consistency of inequality as far as men and women are concerned, and that our power relations are always uneven, or unequal is the ways in which we are all socialized. As women, we are socialized right from when we are girls into being prim and proper, regardless of the society you're from. It means different things in different societies, but we are all brought up to be good women, starting from being good girls. Sit properly, sit right. Don't speak too loud. Your voice must never be heard above a whisper. Don't speak unless you are spoken to. Don't be too forward, otherwise nobody will marry you. A man will assume that you are too opinionated. And for men, they are socialized right from when they are boys to believe that they own the world, that they can go out and be leaders. So while they go out to the field and to the football field, playing football, getting exercise, and building political and social capital with 21 other boys on the field, the girls are in the kitchen learning how to make the perfect eba and the perfect egusi. And so when we grow into adults, how are we surprised that these young men who have been brought up to believe that they own the world, that they are better than girls and they are better as men than women, why won't they feel a sense of entitlement to women's bodies? Why won't they feel that they can talk to women anyhow? Do they feel that every woman has a price? Because that's the way they've been socialized. The only thing that women want or need is money. So all you have to do is, promise her something, wave some cash around, pay for a few meals, buy her some trinkets, and then she's yours for the asking. So it goes on and on and on. And there are other aspects to it. But to speak to your specific question, many men are raised with a sense of entitlement to women's bodies, to their minds, to their space. And it's going to be, so if we are going to be correcting that, we need to go back to how we raise our boys, how we raise our girls. And those of us who are in these positions we are in, who have different kinds of platforms, or who are parents or grandparents, we now need to have a rethink about how we use our space, how we use our powers and privilege, and how we try and change that narrative from what it's been, because it has led us down a very slippery slope.
Well, but that is the problem, really. As we, I started from the realm of thought. But let me ask a critical question. I see the amazing work the governor's wives are doing, working against gender-based violence. And you have managed to get the governors to say, oh, yes, we support this. This is nice. My worry is, isn't it all talk? How can we be saying, oh, yes, it's nice, when only 8 states out of 36 have assented or have domesticated the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act? So we have 36 people sitting around the table, only 8 have agreed to that. And yet they're saying, oh, yes, yes, yes. We have to give teeth to it. So aren't we really deceiving ourselves? Are we serious, really, when till date Nigeria has not ratified CEDAW? So quite frankly, who are we kidding?
Well, the thing is, my sister, there's no one to kid but ourselves. And so if we want things to change, we all have to take responsibility. And we should be under no illusions. I certainly don't have any illusions that our government can solve all our problems. This is not a government problem. The government has its own role to play, and we need to hold them accountable. But this is a problem that every single member of society, regardless of where we are located, we all have a role to play. There is some better news, following on from what you've said. So far, there are actually 13 states in the country who have domesticated the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. And there's a 14th state and 15th state loading. Bauchi is loading, Akwa Ibom is loading, as the young people say. So hopefully within the next month or so, we'll have another 2. And the Nigerian Governors Forum, having declared the state of emergency, the commitment they made was that those who have not domesticated the legislation, either the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act or the Child Rights Law, will go back to their states and ensure that it's done. Those who already have the legislation then need to put in more political will to ensure implementation. And that is where our own group comes in, the Nigerian Governors' Wives Against Gender-Based Violence. Because what we did was to come together and say amongst ourselves we need to do something, because this is something we are all concerned about. So we've lent our voices to what women's organizations and civil society have been saying, that we need a state of emergency declared. I have been very strong on that right from last year when we had the 16 days of activism, that we need to declare, if you can declare a state of emergency in other sectors like education, health, and so on, we need a state of emergency on sexual and gender-based violence. Or should we wait till all of us, regardless of who we are walking down the streets and we are stripped and attacked? So fortunately, our husbands at the Nigerian Governors Forum, they agreed and they decided that they were all going to go back and work on it as a matter of urgency. The Federal Executive Council also received a memo for the first time in history, a memo on women's rights issues from the Minister for Women's Affairs, Dame Pauline Tallen. And on the strength of that, the federal government has now set up a national coordinating mechanism to address gender-based violence. Now, for me,
I can hear you. You're good. You're
perfect.
Okay,
because I just my screen just went up. Okay. So my own interpretation of the state of emergency is that all our public sector institutions, the National Assembly, the Judiciary, the Inspector General of Police, even our corporate the private sector, the corporate entities, the academic institutions, they all need to sit down and see how this applies to their own sector or to their own institution, and then everyone take action accordingly. Because this is something that affects every single one of us. And we can't sit down and say, we expect the government to solve the problem. It will keep happening. And critical to ensuring that an agenda around gender-based violence is addressed is community ownership. Our communities at grassroots level, our communities in our rural areas, they need to be a part of that. They need to own it. And so that is where our other institutions like the religious institutions, our traditional rulers, our community leaders, the associations, that's where they come in. We need to ensure that we do as much work as possible, as much work as we can with them for reorientation and education. Because a lot of times when we are unable to get prosecutions through to the logical conclusion, it's because they've been sabotaged, by our communities. So we need to do as much work as possible with a broad range of stakeholders. So that's what we are trying to do as Governors Wise. That's what a lot of civil society organizations are trying to do. So we expect that the public institutions and the corporate bodies who might also be following these conversations should plot their own roadmaps to see how this state of emergency on gender-based violence, how it affects them as well, or how it concerns them.
Yes, sabotage. And I'm going to get back to that. But one of the things we find, and I promised everybody, by the way, that we're not taking any prisoners today. So one of the things we find is that at the much lower levels, women are actually able, when they learn, to say no. Women are actually able to speak up and speak out. But then go one notch higher to the middle class woman, the upper middle class, the woman who stands to lose status, or perhaps who stands to be regarded as a high flyer. And she's in a constantly abusive relationship. She's constantly violated. How can we give a voice to women who feel the need to protect their status or themselves? How can we get them to begin to be a bit more vocal about what they're going through? Because we find that a lot of times at those levels, a lot of nonsense is going on and nobody's talking about it.
Yes. You see, in the feminist movement, what we often say is that the best thing you can do for a woman, for her to have a sense of empowerment, for her to have a sense of control, is to provide her with choices. And the issue of choice is probably one of the paths that I followed that got me to working on gender issues, working on feminist issues, and help frame my thinking today. As I was growing up, I would see a lot of things going on around me with older women around me, whether in my family or in the neighborhood. And I would ask the question, why is this woman going through this situation? And then they would tell me it's because she doesn't have a choice. And that did not sit well with me. And it kept bothering me. I kept thinking, why don't women have a choice? So now I believe that if women have a range of choices, then they'll be able to make an informed choice as to what steps to take. Many women, regardless of whether they live in a shed, in a slum area, or they live in a mansion, they are going to be faced with the question of what is in your own best interest. And if you were given the choice, what choice would you make? A lot of women from poor neighborhoods who we work with almost on a daily basis through the Gender and Vulnerable Persons Unit in my office, they stay in violent relationships because they do not have a choice. There is literally nowhere else for them to go. And when we provide them with the options that are available to them to say, if you want to leave your home, either on a temporary or a permanent basis, we can provide you with shelter till your situation is resolved. And then it will be up to you to decide whether you want mediation and carry on for that, or whether you want to proceed with a divorce. Any choice you make is up to you, but we are giving you that choice. We are not going to force any choice on you. That is the most liberating thing you can do for a woman. And you'll be amazed as to how people would react when they know that they actually have these choices. For women who are from middle class backgrounds, elite women, and so on, it's again also important for them to have choices. Of course, many of us know women who are going through extremely difficult situations, and they know that they can leave and get their own accommodation, or go and live with a family member, go to their children, or just they have a choice to do something. But because of what people will say, because of the stigma attached to separation and divorce, they choose to stay. Again, the operational word there is choice. And so we can't continue to live in a society that forces women into making choices that are disastrous for their emotional and psychological well-being. Women should be able to choose whether to stay in a marriage. Women should be able to choose whether they leave. But we should not be forcing women to stay when they don't want to stay, but they are staying because there's nowhere else for them to go, or because people will say she has failed. She might have failed. In your own opinion, she might have failed in marriage, but she's won the jackpot as far as life is concerned. If she stays and gets beaten to death, then what do we have to say about that? And when I have sessions with women in the community, in our local languages, I usually ask them the question that my mothers, because they're all mothers, many of you grandmothers, I want to give you a choice here. Do you want your daughter to come home safe and sound, but she's separated or divorced, but something has happened that she's back in your house safe and sound? That is one choice. Or should they bring your daughter back to you dead for you to bury? And they will all scream without exception, no, maje, otio. So why do we continue to put pressure on women to stay in violent relationships? Why do we continue to tell women that they do not have a choice? There's no woman I know of, there's no family I know of who is going to get married on a Saturday with the sole purpose of divorcing on a Monday. I'm not aware of any such family, but things happen. So what we are saying is we should stop normalizing violence against women. If women make the choice to get married, that's okay. And if they marry, then they should have peace of mind. They should have dignity and respect. And if they choose to leave, again, it is their choice. Our job as women's human rights defenders, as I said, is to provide them with a range of options. Do you need counseling? Do you need shelter? Do you need financial support for you to start a business? Those are the opportunities or options that we can provide. But at the end of the day, it's each woman's choice, and every woman has a fundamental human right to choice. Oh, I can't hear.
Oh, I can't hear. You can't hear me?
Oh, now I can hear you.
I can hear you. You
Oh,
can't
now I
hear?
can hear you.
Oh, good. Now, I'm saying that you've worked in this area for a very long time. And part of what people say is, what are the social safety nets available for me to make those choices? Okay. Even for the groups, for the women's groups who are working in this area, they've been doing a great job. But what kind of support are they getting? Government, whether even from communities, and that begins to become a big issue. In fact, I have a question on the screen that says, perhaps as you answer this, could you share with us your experience in dealing with the police response to violence against women? Because that's an institution that should support it. But there are people who, you and your husband, he beats you up because say, Madam, make an go house, go settle na family quarrel. Stuff like that. Your boyfriend beats you, say, I beg you, not you go in house. You get those kinds of things. What has been your experience, and what kind of ways, now we're having this conversation, can we begin to change all of this?
Yes, okay. So I'll start with the issue of social safety nets. There are different ways in which we could frame those. I don't. Do you remember the speech I gave last year and the essay that followed it? Where's your rapper?
Where's your rapper?
Yes.
This is the point at which women need to bring out rappers for other women. You need to bring a rapper out for your friend, your sister, your auntie, and even men who might be listening who will say, but I don't have a rapper, this is all for women. Men too can bring out their fathers, because a lot of women have also been supported and protected by men. We all need to be able to hold up a rapper for the next person. Somebody who comes to you to tell you what her problem is, tell you that she needs help. Please don't add to the person's problem. Don't tell her all the things you would do to the man if you were the one married to him. How you would break his head, how you would poison his food, how you would beat up his mother who is bothering you. And how you are now going to take her to the person who solves your own problem and take you to your favorite babalawo or your favorite pastor. The woman who has come to you seeking advice and help is relying on you to provide information and advice that comes from a place of integrity, that comes from a place of love and understanding, and also wisdom. Now, there are other things that can be put in place. Unfortunately, not everyone has access to them. Many women's rights organizations throughout the country have organized shelters and safe houses to support women. And so, if one of the things we are trying to do is to publicize the availability of all these resources in each state. Part of the advocacy we are doing as governors wise is to say every state should have a government shelter. Even if you have NGOs providing the shelter service, every state should have a government-owned shelter. And then every state should have the equivalent of a sexual assault referral center, known as a SARC, where someone who has experienced sexual violence can go to for emergency treatment, for counseling, for collection of forensic evidence, and for liaison with the police and other relevant authorities. So, so these safety nets, as I said, they vary depending, on what's available in your community. But for me, the most important thing is for every woman, wherever you are, to be prepared to shelter another woman, be prepared to support another woman in any way you can. Help pay her children's school fees, help walk with her to the hospital, help contribute to her lawyer's fees. If mediation is an option, support that as well. But please don't be the one who drives a woman who has come to you for help into making the wrong choices. Now, on the issue of the police, now, because of the way the uniformed forces operate, they take orders from above. They are supposed to take instructions from above. And from my experience of working not just here in Nigeria on these issues, but in other places as well, I said this the other day on one of the Instagram live programs. It's the pressure cooker approach that we need to apply. Pressure from the top, as in all their oga police from the top, and also steam from below, from the communities holding the police accountable. Now the Inspector General of Police knows that we are calling for his own interpretation of the state of emergency, that we want him as a police chief to tell us how this is going to play out to the rank and file of police. So we can then hold the police in our communities accountable. If you go to a police station to report on anything and the policeman is making fun of you, is not taking you seriously, take his name and information and let us have it. Pass it through those who are working on GBV issues in your state, and let's make sure that their organs get to hear about it. If there's a culture that has emerged over the years in the police force about not taking women's issues seriously, about condoning all forms of violence, then that culture now needs to be changed. It needs to be redefined. Now they know that Nigerian women mean business, and the handful of men who support us as well. So now they know we mean business. So we need to put them on notice, but we also now need to start holding them accountable. Where you see the infractions, go to town on them, tweet about them, send messages around so that we can pass the information on to their bosses that this person is the one who told a rape victim, as was done a few weeks ago. Why are you crying? Why are you shouting here? Are you the first person whose daughter is going to be raped? A police officer who is being paid by our taxes saying that. So that culture, needs to change, because they are there to protect us. They are there to ensure that, our lives don't become more difficult than they are. So they cannot continue to be stumbling blocks. We need to hold them accountable.
Great. Now, and I'm going to, there are a few other issues I want to deal with, but there's something I'm trying to look at here. So I hear what you're saying, and that's well and good. But we live in a country where there are different cultural beliefs. And so cultural beliefs, religious beliefs, all of these could be impediments in this whole issue of gender-based violence. I mean, whereas it might seem like you're being violent if you violate a girl of 10 or 12 down here in Ekiti state, that might not quite be the case somewhere else where it's all right for a girl of 12 to be married off. So if therefore in such a situation you have that scenario and they say, listen, she might be thwarted, and so I can get to her body the way I wish. I don't know if that's a conversation you're having at the Governor's Wives Forum when you look at these inequalities, as it were, and if that's something you've put in front of the governors, and if that's something you're willing to push to the legislature, because the legislature does have a role to play.
Yes. Now, I have learned that one of the most effective ways to get your issues across is to rely on legal and policy frameworks. Of course, they still have to be implemented and so on, but that's where you start, so that no one feels that you are singling them out for blame or finger pointing, witch hunting and so on. Now, in Nigeria, we don't have all the legal frameworks that we ought to have, that we deserve as Nigerian women and children, to protect us, but we do have some. We have the Child Rights Act, which all states in Nigeria are supposed to domesticate. All the states in the southern part of Nigeria have domesticated the Child Rights Act. We still have a handful of states in the northern part of the country who have not done so. And one of the commitments that was made by the governors is that they'll go back to their states, and where the Child Rights Act has not been domesticated, they will try and make sure that that happens. And I know that as we speak, that work is going on in those different states. Now, the Child Rights Act makes provision for a minimum age of marriage. That is probably why there's been some resistance over the years, but it makes provision for a minimum age of marriage. And if you notice, over the past couple of years, there have been so many instances of the abuse of minors, babies of a month old, 2 months, 6 months, then 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. There have been so many of these things that people are fed up. Religious leaders, traditional rulers all over the country are now fed up. So there is this groundwell of opinion in the country right now that something drastic needs to be done. And so maybe this is the moment we've been waiting for, where these governors now have an opportunity to get these laws working with their state house of assemblies passed, so that we stop singling people out on the basis of it's because it's their religion, that's why they're doing it. This is what the law says. If you want to have a relationship with a girl, if you want to ask for her hand in marriage, have a conversation with her the moment she turns 18. So once we have these legal frameworks in place, it will make things a lot easier. And now, even when we have them in place, there's still an uphill battle. We have the child rights law domesticated in Ekiti State as far back as 2006. But we still see a lot of sexual abuse of particularly teenage girls happening. There's abuse of minors, and then there's abuse of teenage girls under the guise. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you very
Yes.
loud and clear.
Yes. There's a lot of abuse of teenage girls under the guise of, she gave consent. We have many communities where there's so much poverty. And so if you call a 12, 13, 14-year-old and you entice her with, 50 naira, 100 naira, some loaves of bread, some Indomie, and she goes off with you, and that is what you are calling consent, that is sexual exploitation. And it's a criminal offense as far as the child rights law is concerned, because there is no such thing as consensual sex with a minor. So I think, as I've been saying, the first port of call for us is to ensure that these legislations are in place. Once we can get them in place, then we can keep pushing for the implementation through awareness raising, sensitization, and ensuring that there's a fair amount of outrage coming from our communities. We need all mothers to rise, and fathers too. Aren't you tired of seeing your children brutalized? So there's nothing romantic about a 12-year-old getting pregnant, about a 13-year-old being married off. There's nothing romantic about it at all.
Yeah.
Having said that, we cannot address these issues in isolation of the economic empowerment of women and girls. So our advice to our leaders is to ensure that as they go about the implementation of all these laws, they make the economic empowerment and livelihoods of women a priority.
Awesome. And I was going to the issue of the economic empowerment of women and livelihood of women is something we're coming to, and I'm taking you to the matter of decision making. I was reading your book, your autobiography, and something that interested me was the matter with the Kegites and the chief. And the fact that, I guess you guys didn't know, yes, Her Excellency was very much carried.
Yes. And I'm still carried. I'm Mother General in the Kegite Club.
You will see that. So, I was looking at that. And one of the things that stood out there was, even in those social constructs at the university level, a woman couldn't rise to be chief. I don't know if that has changed. A woman couldn't rise to be chief. And time it was when you sat down in political organizations and a woman can, once you're a woman leader, if they're very nice to you, assistant treasurer, but, and that's it. Whether at ward or unit levels, or even when you're looking at, simple social organizations where you hardly found women climbing up, not to talk of cultural institutions. So if we're going to be providing these protections, at least I know that in most villages, women can still not be kings or chiefs. These are the social realities. These are the constructs we need to take down. And my question is, how can we even begin? I look at it and I'm looking at this maze of confusion I threw out my hands in the air. How can we begin to mainstream and have more women actually in serious decision making so that even in the formulation of laws and implementation of policy, we have voices inside? Because if you're not on the table, nobody's going to speak for you.
Yeah. Well, a number of things. First of all, I think we need to broaden our concept and understanding of leadership and being in decision-making positions. It should not be narrowly confined to political spaces. We need women in leadership across board. And we've seen them emerge. It's just that we need more. We need women in leadership in our public institutions. We need them in our private institutions, in our tertiary institutions, in our faith-based organizations, in our civil society organizations. We need women's voices, women's perspectives, and women's unique understanding of how the world runs. There are some things you see and you think it can only be a man who came up with this or who thought of this. Women, we think differently, about these things. So I think that's a good place to start from. Let's broaden our understanding of what leadership is all about and talk about women being in leadership, period, across board. Then following on from that, we need to be able to popularize the notion of women as leaders in the political space. Women actually contesting for political office. Women actually being part of mainstream political parties, going through all the different spaces, holding office in the parties that are other than woman leader or welfare officer. We need women who can be party chair. We need women who can be the legal advisor, who can be the auditor, because these are the positions in parties that give you the leverage that is required when you want to now start negotiating for something, to do with, for example, getting a ticket to run for the state or national assembly. Then we also need to develop a culture that is not so unfriendly to women in the political space. Now, because men, remember we were talking about patriarchy and socialization. Part of the socialization of men is that they own public space. They own how they use their time. They are not encumbered with all the things that happen back home. It's not their problem. Who cooks, who does the children's homework, who puts them to bed, it's not their problem. So these men can afford to stay at political meetings till 2 in the morning. And any woman who sits in on those meetings has got a name for herself. She has to be a prostitute. She either has to be the wife of one of them or she's a prostitute. What are you doing with men in an hotel at 2 in the morning? What kind of meeting are you having? Now, nobody asks the men what kind of meeting you are having, but they ask the women what kind of meeting are you having at 2 in the morning? And so the space is so unfriendly for women, and that is why the handful of women who we find at the top tier of these political engagements, we need to give them a lot of kudos. But it shouldn't really be like that. And then when it also comes to the politicking, having to go around to campaign, to ask for votes, there is so much intimidation, there's so much thuggery. Women now have to level up by also going out to recruit their own boys who would basically do the same thing as these men are doing. And that way we continue to make the political space more violent and more and the space that actually women do not feel that they are welcome. So I think we need to change the face of politics by getting more women right from when they are young to be involved in political processes, understand how political machinery works, have mentors, real mentors Not the kind of mentors who will tell them, come and see me in my hotel later. Or who will tell you, look, this list of those who are going to be given positions, I'm the one who's going to do it. You better come and see me. Not those kinds of mentors. So we need the few women we have in the political space to be champions for other women. And I know that in my own small way, I've tried my best. I managed to get tickets for women in our party in Ekiti in 2011 to go into the State House of Assembly, and they won their seats. Four of them. And in 2018, the elections were 2019. 2019, we've got another 4 women in the Ekiti State House of Assembly, and we have one in the National Assembly. Now, that came out of a whole process of begging and appealing and waiving our gender and equal opportunities law in Ekiti State, saying this law says 35%. Even if you can't give us 35%, give us something, but you are not going with nothing. And also a little bit of, I would say intimidation, but okay, you don't want to do this, okay, and you want to get favors from Oga, we shall see. So a combination of all those, yes, we have to be prepared to be champion for other women. But more seriously, I want to see a time where we don't have to resort to subterfuge, to begging, to endless conferences on the importance of women in politics, the importance of bringing in women. It should be seen as a matter of course. It should be seen as a logical part of our democratic development as a country. Right now, our figures are shameful, and we cannot continue like this.
Mm-hmm. And you make that point. Our figures are shameful. There are those who say, well, what are you talking about? Even the US did not elect a woman as president. And then I say to them, yes, they didn't, but Liberia did. So why why are we going so far away when next door it happened? Malawi did. We had a Joyce Banda. So why are we going so far away? In our own country, we had a Queen Amina. In the Niger Delta, we had a Queen Kambasa. So why are we going so far away? But I hear the things you're saying, and it brings me to your rapper initiative. That's something, I think that trended so much because it spoke to everybody's reality. I think for most people who read that piece, it was strong. It wasn't just that it was emotional, it was real, it came alive. And so that brings me to a conversation that many people have in the political space. How are we going to ensure that we create those support structures? The men, the men have the good old boys network. You've talked about mentorship, and a lot of the men, you have almost a tradition where men mentor other men to fit into their position. They identify them early, they mentor them, they groom them, they give them a piggyback, they have a hands up. It happens so much, with the men. And the problem is, does it happen with the women? And now I'm going to hit this at you directly. So spouses of governors are the ones who sometimes are closest to their spouses. And women in decision making, some of whom also work along with these governors, might benefit, and those who also want to go into election, might benefit if we can have a collaboration where the spouses, those already in decision making, can then get together and mentor younger women who can fit in and come up in the spaces. What are people like you doing to ensure that these kinds of connections happen and this kind of social structure is actually formed? Basically, I'm saying, why won't you be a godmother?
As I said, my sister, in my own tiny corner here, me, I'm forming godmother. My own tiny day, yeah. I won't go to another place and start talking about that. So in this tiny corner of the correct government now.
No, because we need
during the JKF1 period, what we call Jonka the Fayemi One administration, 2010 to 2014.
Yes.
What happened was I created a network for spouses of government officials, just like what they have in Lagos, the Council of Women, Council of Wives of Lagos State
officials. Yes.
So I created the Forum of Spouses for Ekiti State officials.
Yes.
So the spouses of the cabinet members, the assembly members, the local government members, and the husbands of the female political appointees, they also had their own group.
Yes.
So everybody came together under the auspices of the Forum of Spouses of Ekiti State officials, Possessor. Then, surprisingly, the women who were in government as commissioners, special advisors, and so on, they came and said, "Erelu, this is not fair. But what about us?" So, together with the state deputy governor, Olayinka, may her soul rest in peace. So we created the Forum of Women in Leadership. And that was a space where during that period, we used that to support the women who were in leadership in government. We did peer learning with them, capacity. We went to Nairobi to the Africa Leadership Center for a one-week leadership program. It was really nice. Unfortunately, when we left, it all went away. So now in the JKF2 administration, I've revived Possessor, I've revived For Will, and we now have a network of young women in politics in the state. And guess how many they are? At the last count, I know there are a minimum of 5,000 in all the local governments. And it's from this network of young women in politics that we were able to get a group of them to run for local government elections last year. So some of these young women are now leading their councils as vice chairs, as secretaries, as councillors. It's absolutely amazing. And then others are working as assistants and so on in different parts of government, and many are running their own businesses, and we are seeing what we can do to continue to support them. So that is one concrete way in which I know you mentor and support people. And mentoring is something that's done formally and informally.
Yes.
So the more conversations we have, meetings, initiatives, and make sure that their voices are heard and that they're involved, that's all part of the mentoring process.
And so you bring me to the issue of sustainability. You've done all of this work. In fact, from your own story already, we see that as a matter. So we have someone like you who's a feminist, who is abreast of the issues, who's been doing this all your life, so you didn't chance upon this. And so when you're in government, you actually drive those numbers because this is what you've always done. How are we going to be able to ensure sustainability? In a couple of years, yourself and your husband will be out. What are we going to do to ensure that this kind of initiatives are sustained across board?
That's a good question, Aibee. Considering the fact that I've gone through the experience of knowing what it's like when you leave and you put a whole range of things in place and nothing happens.
Yes.
I know what that is like.
Mm-hmm.
So I also know the opportunities as well. I'll give you an example of what happened with the work around gender-based violence in particular. Now, we have the gender-based violence management committee, which is the implementing body for the law, which I chair in Ekiti State. We did a lot of great work during the JKF1 period. When we left, that committee did not meet for 4 years. It was as if it never existed. Nothing happened. Now, within the law, the GBV law of 2011, before we revised it in 2019, so that we could harmonize it with the VAP Act, the Ekiti GBV law makes provision for a survivors fund, which means we are able to help women with choices.
Yes.
We can give women money for them to get another apartment, for them to start a small business, for them to go back to school, a whole range of things. So what it meant was that for that 4 years, those choices or those opportunities did not exist. Having said that, the law was still there. And one day I was in my car. This was around 2017. I think I was between Ibadan and Lagos, and I heard over the radio that somebody had been sentenced in Ekiti to a certain number of years in prison for rape under the Ekiti State GBV law of 2011. I started to cry. That for me, it was what legacy looks like. That's what sustainability looks like.
Yeah.
As a governor's wife, I'm obliged to do a number of things. To go to orphanages, to kiss babies, to buy machines, and I'm quite happy to do all those things. But it's these building blocks of ensuring that people further down the line who might not know who you are or what your name is, but will benefit because it's part of a system or a process. For me, that is sustainability.
Wow.
And so now, what I'm keeping an eye on is making sure that we have a strong civil society in the state, because they are the ones who held the line during those years, who are able to work on these issues going further, regardless of what political will might look like in the state government.
Wow. Oh my goodness. You know, I just had goosebumps right there when you talked about that, the issue of legacy. And sometimes I wonder if in our various spaces as women who wield some kind of power, any kind of power at all, whether it's in the boardroom or in the marketplace or in the communities or in government houses, whether we think about legacy. And that's something that's standing out, thinking about legacy. Okay, I'm going to take you up by your own words. You know, in your autobiography, you were telling your story, and the reason why you said, you know, at some point you had to count your losses and say to yourself, this PhD program is not going to work. And you said because no matter how you define it, okay, there's no such thing as having it all. No matter how you define it, somehow, somewhere, something will give. And I think almost every human being, not just women, can relate with that. What barriers do women face in developing careers across their work life? Not just in politics, as you try to develop your career, whether you're a young woman or even when you're a middle-aged woman, you still continue to deal with these barriers. What are some of these barriers from your own experience, and how can you surmount them? Yes, we may not have it all, but how can we even attempt to have most of it?
Yes. Well, the issue is we can have it all, but not all at the same time.
Okay.
Probably not all at the same time. Right. All the balls we keep dropping in the air. Sometimes in one of them will drop. Now, one of the many lies that patriarchy tells women is that they have to be perfect. You have to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect professional, if you are one, the perfect daughter-in-law, the perfect sister-in-law, the perfect friend. Hello? And then we
And
as
then we
women, we
as
run
women, we
ourselves
run
ragged
ourselves
because we
ragged
want to
because
be
we want to
liked,
be
we
liked,
want to be
we want to
loved.
be
We don't
loved.
want
We don't
anyone
want
to think we
anyone to
don't
think
have
we
home
don't have home
training. We don't
training.
want
We don't
anyone
want
to
anyone
think
to
that
think
we
that
are
we
not
are not
trying our
trying
best,
our
that we
best,
are
that
not
we are
good
not
enough.
good
And we
enough.
go
And
on
we
and
go
on and
on
on
and
and
on
on
and
and
on
on
and
and on
on
till
and
we
on
have
till we
nervous
have nervous
breakdowns.
breakdowns.
And these
And
men, you
these
want to
men, you
have a
want to
nervous
have a nervous
breakdown
breakdown
over,
over,
will step
will
over
step
your
over
grave
your
and,
grave and,
even before
Go
your
even
on.
before
body is
your
in the
body is in
grave,
the
his
grave, his
comforters are
comforters
there.
are there.
Uncle, what
Uncle,
can we
what
bring
can we
you?
bring you?
Uncle, you have
Uncle,
not
you have not
eaten.
eaten.
There is no
There
such
is no such
thing as
thing as
superwoman,
superwoman,
not even
not even
Superman.
Superman.
And that is
Mm-hmm.
why
And
they
that
are
is why they
cartoon
are cartoon
characters.
characters.
All we can
All we
do
can
as
do as
women
women
is be the
is be
best
the
version
best
of
version of
ourselves
ourselves
possible.
possible.
For the
For the
young
young
women,
women,
I advise
I
that
advise
what you
that what
do
you
is
do
that you
is that you
plan,
plan.
you prioritize. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
yes, I can
Okay.
hear you.
You
Okay,
can
you
plan,
can plan,
Mm-hmm.
you
you
prioritize,
prioritize,
Mm-hmm.
and then you make sure
and
that you
then you
have
make sure
a
that you have
good
a good
support system.
support system.
If you make the
If you make the
choice
choice
to get
to get
married,
married,
then don't
then
go
don't
and
go and
marry,
marry,
have
have
children, and
children,
start
and start
behaving like
behaving
a
like
single
a
parent.
single parent.
You have to
You
have
have
those
to have those
conversations or
conversations or
negotiations with
negotiations
your
with your
husband
husband
about what
about
shared
what shared
responsibilities
responsibilities
mean.
mean.
Remember, we were
Remember,
talking
we were
about the
talking about the
socialization of
socialization
men.
of men.
Yes.
It's not that
It's
some of
not
them mean
that
to be
some of them mean
wicked.
to be
Let me just
wicked.
give
Let
them
me
the
just
benefit
give them
of
the
doubt.
benefit of doubt.
It's just how
It's
they've
just
been
how
brought
they've
up,
been
just how
brought
been
up, just how being
socialized.
socialized.
Women are the ones
Women
who
are the
have to
ones who
care
have to care
about napping,
about
about
napping, about
childcare, about
childcare,
homework,
about
about
homework,
school
about
runs.
school runs.
They have
They
better things
have
to
better
think
things to
about,
think about,
like chasing the
like chasing
mega million
mega million
contract that is
contract
going to
that
make
is going to
everybody
make everybody
comfortable.
comfortable.
And that is the reason
And that is
why
the
in the
reason
year
why in the year
2020,
2020,
our
our
children are
children are
still
still
reading books in
reading books in
school
school,
which tell
which
them
tell them
Mama Emeka
Mama
is
Emeka
making
is
fufu in
making
the
fufu in the
kitchen.
kitchen.
Kitchen. That means
Baba
Baba
Emeka has just come
Emeka has
back
just come
from
back
work
from
from
work
work.
in the year
in the year
2020.
2020.
And so
And so
Emeka too is going
Emeka
to
too
grow
is going to
up
grow up
with the
with the
understanding that his
understanding
wife
that
has
his
to be
wife
in the
has to be in
kitchen,
the
even
kitchen,
if she has
even
been
if
out
she has
all
been out
day.
all
She has
day.
to
She has to
get back
get
home
back
to
home
make
to
fufu
make fufu
or eba in the
eba in the
kitchen. While
kitchen.
he comes
While he
home and
comes home
undoes
and
his tie
undoes his
and she
tie
takes
and
his
she takes his
briefcase.
briefcase.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Hello.
And we keep
And we keep
saying
saying
that
that
young
young
people are
people are
angry.
angry.
Why would they
Why
not be
would they not be
angry? The
angry?
world
The
is
world
changing
is
and we are
changing and we are
refusing to
refusing to
change.
change.
So a lot
So
of
a
things
lot
are
of
going to
things are going
be
to be
renegotiated.
renegotiated.
I am
I am
all
all
for
for
families
families
living together
living
in
together
peace
in
and
peace and
harmony.
harmony.
Yes.
My husband
My
is
husband is
absolutely
absolutely
amazing,
amazing,
but it does
but
not
it
mean
does not
that
mean
all
that
men
all
out
men
there
out
think
there
that
think
way.
that way.
So I am
So I am
hoping
hoping
that we can
that
have
we
a
can have a
society where we
society
can
where
get
we
to a
can get
point
to a point
where we
where we
realize that
realize that
for us
for
to
us to
achieve our
achieve our
development goals,
development goals,
we have to
we
have
have to
healthy
have healthy
communities.
communities.
For us to have
For us to
healthy
have healthy
communities,
communities,
we have to
we
have a
have to have a
society
society
that does
that
not
does not
disempower
disempower
women
women
throughout their life
throughout their life
cycle.
cycle.
So maybe too, as mothers, we start the work from what we do at home. What we whisper to those children at home. I know when I was raising, I've got 4 kids, 3 girls and a boy. And I recall when I was raising my son and he would come into the kitchen because in my opinion, everybody had to take their turns in doing the kitchen chores. And I know my husband would say to me, hey, what is he doing in the kitchen? I said, who is going to make the food? He's right here. He's part of this deal. we're not,
Exactly.
he's going to know how to make his own food. And we've got to begin by raising our children to respect. I'm proud to say that I raised a feminist son and I'm proud of him. And I hope that every woman can say so too. Because the minute we're able to raise our children to understand that everybody matters, then perhaps we'll have a world that is truly more equitable. Well,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
My,
exactly.
my son
My
too.
son too.
And sometimes
And
it
sometimes
comes
it
up with
comes
this
up with this
feminist
feminist
analysis, and coming
analysis, and
from a
coming
man,
from
I
a
look at
man,
him
I
like,
look at
oh
him like,
wow,
oh wow,
wow,
Wow.
okay now,
Wow.
yeah, I must have
I
done
must have
something
done
right.
something right.
Great. Great. Well, it's been wonderful, absolutely amazing speaking with you, Erelu Fayemi. You make conversations very easygoing. I have to say this about you. And I confess very honestly that I truly admire you and the work you've been doing
Oh, thank
through the
you.
time. I'm not, I say that, and I'm not very wonderful at saying that. But I'm going to ask this question. Sometimes we wonder whether there's any light at the end of this tunnel. I look at it and it looks like so much is stacked up against us. Do you see a light at the end of this tunnel?
Yeah, you know, if it hadn't been for COVID-19, this is the year that we were all going to be celebrating 25 years after Beijing. And for those of us who were part of the Beijing conference in 1995, to see how far we have
We
come.
have come.
Oh, Ibim. Oh, my sister has gone.
Ibim.
Where are you?
Yes, I'm here.
Are you there?
I'm
Oh,
right
my
here.
sister has gone.
I'm right here. I'm right here.
Where are
I'm here.
Okay, should I go
Yes.
on?
Yes.
Okay, should I go on?
Yes,
So I was talking
please go
about
on.
2020
So I was talking about
being the year that we were
2020
going to,
being
we
the
should have
year
been
that we were going
celebrating Beijing plus
to,
25.
we should have been celebrating Beijing plus 25.
Yeah.
And as someone who was at the Beijing conference,
And as someone who was at the Beijing conference,
looking back now and seeing
looking
how
back
far we've
now
come,
and seeing how far we've
I'm
come,
really thankful that a lot has been
I'm
achieved.
really thankful that a lot has been achieved.
But I'm not unmindful of the fact that many
But
times,
I'm not unmindful of the fact that many
times it feels as if you are taking 5 steps forward
times it feels as if you are taking
and
5
10
steps
back.
forward and 10 back.
However, I'm an eternally optimistic
However, I'm
person.
an eternally optimistic person.
I look around me
I look
and I
around
see some of
me
the fruits of our labor.
and I see some of the fruits of our labor.
The legal and policy frameworks, for
The
example,
legal and policy frameworks
that we have in place at an international, at an Africa-wide, and at a national level, and many of them state level.
and many of them state level.
So these are some of the things we can hold on to as roadmaps to lead us to where we think we need to go when it comes to issues around women's empowerment and gender equality. I also see the energy and agency of young women, women who are getting involved, who have a fantastic analysis of the issues, who are doing very well in school, and I've attended a number of university convocations over the past 3 years or so, and I sit on the governing council of Elizabeth University. And you'll be amazed as to how many of these young girls win prizes for best students, best performing all round, cutting away all their awards. It's so heartwarming. And so I believe that they will be able to take a lot of this work forward.
Yeah.
My dear sister, I know I still match. I still, 10 to 15 years from now, I'm not going to be going to stand in the sun, picking up, standing up placards. I expect to be exercising leadership in some other way, because we never stop being a feminist. But there are different bits and pieces of it for us to do.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to keep bringing in new faces, new voices, and that gives me a lot of hope. And then I also look at the consensus that is emerging It might sound slow, but compared to where we were before, the consensus that is emerging that we cannot have a better country than what we have now if we are leaving women behind. It does not make any sense. Nigeria did not achieve any of the Millennium Development Goals. Now we are working towards the Sustainable Development Goals. If we don't address each of those 17 goals and how gender issues play out, we will not achieve those either. So we all need to get going. And that's what gives me hope and new energy. That it will be better going forward, and that days ahead will be better than the ones that have gone past. But the idea is all of us need to pick something. Pick a platform. Pick an issue. Pick a butt to kick. But we should all do something.
We should all do something. And this is regardless of whether you're male or female. Because the truth is, each of us is a critical person, a critical actor in all of this conversation. We really can't go far without each other. And it's been amazing speaking with you, Erelu. There are a few things, and you would see the comments. Someone has said, why do people fight in female groups? Why do we have all that power tussle? I say it happens with the men as well. Power tussle in every space, male or female. But you know that thing about the rapper? That's the real deal. Every time I go back and I read that piece again and I say that is the real deal. As long as we have some women willing to hold up rappers for others, there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's been a beautiful evening and a wonderful conversation. And I've been speaking with one woman who I consider an amazing person and who I deeply have a lot of respect for. She's done so much supporting the cause of women, and she's done this from when she was a really, really young lady. I consider her a great woman, and I think most of you do if I go by those comments. And I say, may your road be rough ahead of you, Erelu. And my dear friends, let's do this again next week, Friday. It will be 4 o'clock next week. This week we had to make this exception for Her Excellency. Thank you very much, and it was a great time with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sister Aibee. Thank you for having me. I had a great time. And good luck with all that you do. And for all those who have tuned in, thank you.